Imagine a room with no windows, no cameras, no witnesses, just two men sitting across from each other, separated by a table and a growing chasm of distrust. One of them is Brian Rolapp, the CEO of the PGA Tour. The other is Bryson DeChambeau, a man who has never been comfortable with anyone telling him what to do. The meeting was supposed to be private, off the record, a simple conversation between the boss and one of his most valuable players. But something happened in that room, something that would send shockwaves through the entire golf world. And when the doors opened and Bryson walked out, everyone who saw his face knew this was not a meeting that ended in agreement. Now, here is the part that should make every golf fan lean in. Whatever was said in that room, it changed things. Not just for Bryson, not just for Rolapp, for the entire PGA Tour. Because when two powerful men refuse to see eye to eye, the fallout never stays contained. It spreads. It infects everything. And right now, the infection is spreading fast. But the real question is not what happened in that room. The real question is why. Why did Bryson walk out with that look on his face? Why was Rolapp so determined to push him? And most importantly, what did the CEO say that turned a routine meeting into a powder keg? Here is my take. Bryson has always been different, and that difference is exactly why this meeting happened. But I want to know what you think. Do you believe the PGA Tour is right to demand compliance from its stars, or should players like Bryson have the freedom to do things their way? Drop your opinion in the comments, and if you want to follow this story as it unfolds, hit that subscribe button, because what I am about to tell you, you won't hear anywhere else. What happened next would make everything before it look like a friendly debate. The tension between Bryson DeChambeau and Brian Rolapp didn't start in that private room. It started long before. It started the moment Rolapp walked into the commissioner's office with a vision of a tour that was controlled, predictable, and built around systems rather than individuals. Rolapp came from the NFL. He understood media deals, television ratings, and how to package a product for maximum profit. But golf is not football. Golf is built on personalities, on rivalries, on players who refuse to be just another number on a spreadsheet. And Bryson DeChambeau is the ultimate example of a player who will never fit into a box. To understand what happened in that meeting, you have to understand what Bryson has become. He is not just a two-time US Open champion. He is a brand. He has built an audience of millions who follow him not just for his golf, but for his approach to the game, his experiments, his confidence, his refusal to be ordinary. Rolapp looked at Bryson and saw a player who needed to be managed. Bryson looked at Rolapp and saw a suit who had no idea what it really meant to compete at the highest level. Two men, two completely different worlds, and neither of them was willing to compromise. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Rolapp had already made moves that angered the players. He had reshaped the schedule. He had introduced a two-tier system that downgraded traditional events. He had made it clear that the tour's future belonged to the decision-makers, not the players. And Bryson had been watching, waiting, calculating. When that private meeting was finally called, both men knew exactly what they wanted. Rolapp wanted control. Bryson wanted freedom. And in that tiny room, with no cameras rolling, those two forces collided. That decision would have been enough to make most players back down. But Bryson DeChambeau is not most players. And what Rolapp said next changed everything. The months leading up to that private meeting were filled with warning signs, little moments that should have told everyone something big was coming. Bryson had already been pushing back against the tour's rules. Not loudly, not aggressively, but steadily. He had been testing the boundaries, seeing how far he could go before someone pushed back. At first, it was small things. A comment here, a question there, but then Rolapp introduced his two-tier system, and everything changed. The tour would now have a championship series for the elite players and a challenger series for everyone else. The challenger series would have smaller purses, fewer perks, and less exposure. It would essentially become a second-class tour. Now, here is the part that many fans didn't fully understand. The Challenger Series wasn't just a downgrade for the events themselves. It was a downgrade for the players who competed in them. It meant that if you weren't in the top tier, you were fighting for scraps. And Bryson saw this for exactly what it was, a power grab, a way for the tour to control who gets what. Bryson had always been vocal about protecting the traditional events. The tournaments that had been on the schedule for decades. The ones with history and meaning. The ones that fans traveled across the country to watch. He believed these events deserved better than to be pushed to the margins. And he wasn't afraid to say it. But Rolapp didn't see it that way. He saw numbers. He saw ratings. He saw a product that needed to be streamlined for maximum profit. And he believed that the players who didn't like it could either get on board or get out of the way. Those public shots were just noise. The real knockout punch was thrown in a room with no microphones. The private meeting between Bryson and Rolapp was scheduled for a reason. The tour had been dealing with growing unrest among the players. Many of them were unhappy about the direction of the game. They felt like their voices weren't being heard. They felt like the tour was becoming too corporate, too cold, too detached from what made golf special. Rolapp needed to address this. He needed to show the players that he was listening, that he cared about their concerns. So he called a meeting with one of the biggest names in the game, a player who had the respect of his peers, a player who wasn't afraid to speak his mind. But Rolapp made a critical mistake. He treated Bryson like just another employee. When Bryson walked into that room, he was prepared to listen. He was prepared to have a conversation. But what he heard from Rolapp was not a conversation. It was a lecture, a condescending lecture about how the tour works and why players need to fall in line. Rolapp told Bryson that his concerns were noted, but that the tour was moving forward with its plans regardless. And that was the moment the temperature in the room changed. Bryson didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out. He simply looked at Rolapp and told him that he was wrong, that the tour was making a mistake, that the players would not accept being treated like pawns in a corporate game. But it wasn't just what Bryson said. It was how he said it. The confidence, the certainty, the absolute refusal to back down. And that was when Rolapp made his fatal mistake. He told Bryson to get with the program. He told him that if he didn't like the direction of the tour, he could take his talents elsewhere. It was a threat, a blatant, unmistakable threat. Bryson had drawn a line in the sand, but Rolapp had no intention of stepping back. Someone had to break. Bryson DeChambeau has never been the type of person who responds well to threats. In fact, threats have the opposite effect on him. They make him more determined, more stubborn, more willing to fight. And when Rolapp delivered that threat, Bryson made a decision that would change everything. He looked at the CEO and told him that he would not be treated like just another player. He told him that the tour's rules were outdated, that they were designed to control players rather than empower them. And he told him that if the tour wanted to push him out, they would have to do it publicly, because he was not going to walk away quietly. Now here is the part that should make every golf fan sit up and take notice. Bryson didn't just refuse to back down. He laid out exactly what he wanted. He wanted the freedom to build his brand. He wanted the ability to create content without interference. He wanted the tour to understand that he was not just a player. He was a businessman, an entrepreneur, a force that could not be contained. Rolapp sat there listening. He had expected Bryson to be difficult, but he had not expected this level of defiance, this level of refusal. And for the first time in his career as CEO, he realized that he might not be in control, that the players, especially the ones with power and influence, might have more leverage than he thought. The meeting ended without resolution. Bryson walked out, and Rolapp was left sitting alone in that room, staring at the door, wondering how a simple conversation had turned into a war. Bryson had said his piece, but walking out of that room was easy. Surviving the fallout was the hard part. The fallout from that private meeting was immediate and intense. Word leaked out that something had happened behind closed doors. The golf media started digging. Players started whispering. And within days, the entire golf world was buzzing with speculation about what had gone down between Bryson and Rolapp. But Bryson didn't wait for the rumors to settle. He went public. He gave interviews. He made it clear that he had no intention of backing down. And he did something that shocked everyone. He publicly questioned Rolapp's authority. He said, and I quote, "I don't even think it's Brian Rolapp or anybody like one of the top executives. It's really if the players want me back." That was a direct challenge to the CEO, a public declaration that the players, not the executives, held the real power. And it sent a message to every player on the tour. If Bryson could stand up to Rolapp, so could they. The CEO's authority was no longer absolute. Rolapp responded by trying to downplay the situation. He said that he and Bryson had a conversation. He said that disagreements were normal. He said that the tour was moving forward with its plans regardless. But his words felt hollow, because everyone could see that he had lost control of the narrative. While the players argued amongst themselves, Bryson was already looking at his calendar for 2027. Bryson DeChambeau was not the only player who had issues with the tour's direction. Other players had been quietly expressing their concerns for months, but they had been afraid to speak up, afraid of retaliation, afraid of being labeled as troublemakers. Bryson changed that. He showed them that it was okay to push back, that it was okay to demand better. But Bryson's defiance created a new problem. The players were divided. Some supported him. Others thought he was being selfish. A few even thought he should be punished for his public comments. The tour was fracturing from the inside, and Rolapp had no idea how to fix it. The Players' Council, a group of influential players who helped run the tour, was split right down the middle. Some of them believed that Bryson had gone too far, that he was making the tour look chaotic and weak. Others believed that he was right, that the tour had become too controlling and needed to be reined in. And then there was the issue of Bryson's contract. His deal with LIV Golf was set to expire at the end of 2026. He had been making millions of dollars playing for the Saudi-backed league. But with the Saudis pulling their funding, that option was disappearing. Bryson needed to figure out his future, and the PGA Tour was his only real path forward. But he refused to come back on his knees. He refused to accept whatever terms Rolapp offered. He wanted to be treated with respect. He wanted to be given the freedom he deserved. And if the tour wasn't willing to give him that, he was prepared to walk away from the game entirely. The tour's rulebook was being torn apart, and Bryson was holding the sharpest pen. Here is the part that nobody expected. Bryson had a backup plan. A plan that didn't involve the PGA Tour at all. He had been building his YouTube channel for years, and it was growing faster than anyone could have predicted. Nearly 3 million subscribers, millions of views on every video, and a revenue stream that was becoming increasingly reliable. Bryson's Break 50 series had become a phenomenon. He was playing golf with celebrities, athletes, and influencers. He was reaching audiences that the PGA Tour could only dream of, and he was doing it all on his own terms. No media deals, no corporate sponsors, just him, his camera, and his personality. The tour's restrictions on content creation suddenly looked like a huge mistake. They had tried to control what players could post, and they had created a situation where their biggest star was preparing to leave them behind. Because Bryson didn't need the tour anymore. He had his own stage, his own audience, his own business. Rolapp must have realized this. He must have understood that Bryson had leverage that no other player had. The ability to walk away and still make millions of dollars. The ability to build a brand that didn't depend on the tour's approval. The ability to become something bigger than just a golfer. And that was the real reason Bryson refused to back down. Because he knew something that Rolapp didn't. He knew that he held the winning hand. He knew that the tour needed him more than he needed the tour. And he was willing to bet everything on that truth. Bryson doesn't need a fairway to make a living anymore. That is the scariest thing about him. Now, let's talk about what this all means for the future of the PGA Tour. Because this isn't just about Bryson DeChambeau, it's about the entire sport. The tour is at a crossroads, and the decisions made in the coming months will define professional golf for the next decade. On one side, you have Brian Rolapp. He represents a vision of the tour that is controlled, corporate, and focused on maximizing profit. He wants to streamline the schedule. He wants to limit player power. He wants to create a product that is predictable and easy to sell to broadcasters. On the other side, you have Bryson DeChambeau. He represents a vision of the tour that is player-driven, innovative, and connected to the fans. He wants to protect the traditions of the game while embracing the opportunities of the modern era. He wants to give players the freedom to build their brands and connect with their audiences. Neither side is entirely right. Rolapp has a point about the need for the tour to evolve. The old model is broken, and something new has to take its place. But Bryson also has a point. The players are the ones who make the tour great. They deserve to have a voice. They deserve to be treated with respect. The problem is that neither man is willing to compromise. and that means the conflict is only going to get worse. The ball is now in Rolapp's court, but he might not have a serve left. Bryson DeChambeau has drawn a line in the sand. He has made it clear that he will not be controlled. He will not be managed. He will not be treated like just another employee. And the PGA Tour has a choice to make. They can either accept Bryson's terms and give him the freedom he wants, or they can dig in their heels and risk losing one of the biggest stars in the sport. There is no middle ground, no way to please everyone. Someone is going to lose. But here is the thing. Bryson is not alone. He has the support of many players who feel the same way he does. They might not be as vocal. They might not have the same platform, but they are watching. They are waiting. And if the tour makes an example of Bryson, they will know that the same thing could happen to them. Rolapp has to be careful. He is walking a tightrope. One wrong move and he could lose the locker room entirely. The players need to feel that their voices matter, that their concerns are taken seriously, and if they don't feel that, they will start to wonder if the tour is really worth their loyalty. But Bryson also has to be careful. He has pushed hard. He has taken a stand, and now he has to be prepared to deal with the consequences. The tour could retaliate. They could make life difficult for him. They could find ways to punish him without making it obvious, and Bryson needs to be ready for that fight. This story isn't over. In fact, it's only just beginning, and the next chapter depends on one thing. The private meeting between Bryson DeChambeau and Brian Rolapp was a turning point in the history of the PGA Tour. It wasn't just a disagreement about rules or schedules. It was a clash of visions, a fight for the soul of the game. Bryson walked into that room as a player who wanted to build his brand. He walked out as a leader who had taken a stand for every player who felt silenced. He refused to back down. He refused to be controlled. And in doing so, he changed the conversation about power in professional golf. Rolapp, on the other hand, walked into that room as a CEO who wanted to assert his authority. He walked out as a man who had learned that authority is not given, it is earned. And he had not earned the respect of the players he was trying to lead. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a sport that is divided, a tour that is struggling to find its identity, and a group of players who are more empowered than ever before. The old rules no longer apply. The old structures are crumbling, and what comes next is anyone's guess. But one thing is clear. Bryson DeChambeau changed the game, not just with his swing, not just with his content, but with his refusal to accept the status quo. He showed the world that players have power, that they can push back, that they can win. Here is my final take. Bryson DeChambeau did what everyone else was too afraid to do, and whether you agree with him or not, you have to respect the courage it took to stand up to the most powerful man in golf. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Bryson was right to refuse to back down, or has he gone too far? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button right now, because this conversation is far from over. In fact, it is only just getting started.